Hello. Checking in with The Butterfly Lampshade by Amy Bender. All about the rupture of this woman's life as a young girl of 8, and then her coming to kind of terms with it as a young adult, like in her 20s, late 20s, I think. Or I think coming to terms with it. I guess we'll see. This definitely section was notable for a flashback scene with her having dinner with her mother and grandparents, and I think Aunt Minnie is there as well. And the grandmother, who sends a bottle of poison to the doctor who performed the birth of her mother, and where her mother knocked her head as a child, as a completely newborn infant, and her grandmother now, blaming the doctor for this, and every year sending him a bottle of poison wrapped up in very festive paper at Christmas. And actually, that's the kind of the interesting, eccentric thing. The other thing is, yes, Aunt Min is pregnant, heavily pregnant at this point with a thing, and she's suffered miscarriages. And her mother reaches out and takes a sip of her water. And when she does this, Aunt Min just sort of gives her the glass and goes and gets a fresh glass. And it's like, she's like, you won't take a sip of this. Francine realized, you won't take a sip of this because you're afraid it's catching, that somehow you're going to catch whatever thing makes my mother mentally ill, and it'll get passed on to your baby. And it's like, drink it. If you don't think that's true, drink it. And things pass by, and she won't. It doesn't happen. They all go to the table. Francine takes the poison to the table and makes it the centerpiece on the table. And she's told not to. She's told to take it away, and she keeps her hand on it. And her grandmother, who is sort of the authoritarian of the family, they have a staring contest, and Francie wins. Francie can do that stare. She can be absolutely still and just stare. And Aunt Min says, like, later, it's like, it was kind of somebody terrifying. We didn't know what you were going to do. Were you going to drink it? Were you going to pour it in everybody else's? She takes it away from the table afterwards and carries it around with her. Thing. So there's that. And at the end, when saying goodbye to the grandmother, she says she wasn't a mistake. The doctor hitting her didn't do anything to her. This isn't, it's not a mistake. It's like, it's kind of a fierce kind of devotion there. Also in here, we get more about Francie's kind of violent imaginings. We had one scene already earlier with her and the babysitter, where she tells the babysitter, I'm thinking about, you burning, me setting you on fire, and stuff like that. Like, she has violent things. And she has another one looking at Vicky, newborn Vicky, and her the unknitted part of the skull of a human being, which doesn't knit together fully until after they're born, which allows them to actually get through the birth canal. The fontanelle is what it's called, the fontanelle. And she imagines plunging something like a pen or a scissors right smack in that thing. And it's then that she asks to be locked in her room by her aunt. And indeed, her aunt does lock her in the room. They get a lock put on thing from the outside, and she's locked in her room. And then Vicky does it after her thing. And, I had already picked up on it, because I'm a superior reader, that in the modern day now, that she was having a neighbor, and then his wife lock her into her room, and then unlock her in the morning. This comes out more explicitly in the book, because it was just kind of done. Matter of fact, maybe if you weren't paying attention, you would have noticed it. But I did, so I feel very proud about myself. I don't know if it was supposed to be a surprise here, but that yes, that that this has been happening because the landlady comes over, building manager comes over while Vicky is there and starts asking her about this. And so like this is above board, isn't it? And like yeah, they it's above board. She pays them to do it. They've got something signed about it, all that stuff. So fire code wise, that's kind of eh. But yeah, it's to her bedroom, which indeed does have a lock on the outside of it. And Vicky sees this and says, you're not psycho. You're not gonna see. Look, my head's all thing is all healed up now. You can't get me. It's like, why am I getting another baby? And so it's like, okay, well, we're gonna confront this. And Vicky's like, yeah. And so she's taken the lock. She's taken the lock off of the door and it's going to stay over the night. And I guess we will see how that plays out. Vicky is very brash and very kind of young, kind of like, oh, we're just going to take care of this, which in that kind of young way of things where it might not. And yeah, this is all still coming out in her tent here, having this time in her tent, her cocoon maybe, of just sort of figuring things out. Yeah, all swirling about this event. It's carrying me. It's all like short little chapters. Definitely done very kind of short little chapter wise, which I guess makes it pacey. It's like this goes from we're going all the way from chapters 26 to 46. But they're very short little chapters. It's not like, long swaths. This is like a couple of pages. Some of them are very short, like maybe a page or two, I would think, on a written page. I'm listening to it on audio. Really well written, well told. It is it's both slight and important at the same time, if you know what I mean. It's an individual life. But I'm engaged and interested, and it's not being too twee. I don't think it's being twee. That's my biggest fear, is it's going to be twee, or it's going to get twee, or I'm missing the tweeness because I'm a twee guy myself. I don't know if I feel a particular emotional engagement. I sort of wonder about Vicky in some ways. Vicky is very obsessed about this as well, and you start looking at all the people in this family and thinking, well, maybe it's not Francie who's the one who's going to have mental issues. Maybe it's going to be Vicky. And indeed, we have a scene earlier where it talks about getting all the alloy out of their teeth, because they've Aunt Min has heard that you could conduct radio waves and you could hear voices that way, and she wants to be absolutely sure that if anyone's hearing voices, it's not because of their teeth. So both Francie and Vicky have the teeth turned to like a composite thing versus an alloy, for to make sure that about the voices. So there's that too, and it's like that thing of carrying that within your family, carrying that around with you, of like, I can be like, oh, I'm an eccentric fellow, but I don't have anything of like, and yes, there were people in my family who were eccentric who then had a psychotic break. That kind of fragileness of being a functioning human being, or being a human being who's got a firm grasp on reality, and not in that kind of airy-fairy kind of hippie way of like, oh man, we all have different concepts of reality thing. But it's like, when someone's just not there, right? And yeah, continuing with the whole thing of objects, of the thing of, oh, I think, yeah, in this time, we learned that Francie, like her mother, was so obsessed with making sure all the stuffed animals were sitting up straight. Francie's like, these are all just inanimate objects. And she gets the skewer and she rips each and every one of those stuffed animals apart. And part of that she kind of knows probably accelerated her mom's downward spiral because this happens in the days before. So she feels sort of there's a guilt there, but there's also kind of rebellion and anger there. And I think, maybe that's one of the other things is this is a very controlled, Francie is a very controlled little girl and a controlled adult. And you wonder if a part of that control is all this anger, like all this violent imagery just comes from, unexpressed anger. And there's at some point where she talks about unexpressed grief, like she would just have super crying jags, and it wasn't that she was sad, it was more like her body was just releasing the sorrow that was in it, but it was the body, not her. So yeah, there's the things of objects, because she's this person who can buy objects and refresh them and sell them to people at a profit. Things that seem seemingly valueless junk, she can sort of see, oh, this is the value of this. She's got the kind of a certain kind of objectivity, to make a pun, but also a statement that she can see, that I can sell this. That someone will buy this at if I buy this for 5 cents, I can sell it for $20 to somebody. Just reframed, delineated in a certain way, described a certain way, curated a certain way, and it becomes valuable. Yeah, and that's what she's doing. She's lying in her tent. She's selling stuff online. She doesn't have she has hardly any possessions in her home, which is interesting for somebody who's all about kind of selling things, selling knickknacks, curios. I don't know if it's knickknacks and curios, things, objects that other people assign emotional values to, which she does not seem to do, like those teddy bears. She says, like, bear, that her mother calls it, but she knows which is with a capital B, but she knows that she calls it bear with a lowercase b, the bear, the stuffed bear. It's not even a bear, it's the stuffed bear, really. So yeah, it is an interesting book. It is engaging me, I guess. I can say that. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later. In the rain.